We were living in a 55 plus retirement community, your typical RV resort where you're like 10 feet from your neighbor. My biggest idea of house hacking was live as cheaply as possible.
You were the best tenants they ever had. That also, I think, gives you a lot of good perspective on how to be a good landlord.
That's what it's all about. It's taught me how to be a tenant, but also it's taught me how to be a better landlord in a way. If I can do it, you can too. One step at a time.
Welcome back to the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast, the show where we break down how high performers are building real estate portfolios without burning out or blowing up their lives. Today, I have a special guest, Joe Jimenez, beaming in from Kalispell, Montana. Joe's a real estate investor, hospitality entrepreneur, and full-time adventurer. After hiking both the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail, and living in an RV full-time for over 6 years, Joe traded in his dirtbag life to build a small and mighty real estate portfolio in Montana. Alongside his wife, Katie, he owns a boutique hotel and a handful of vacation rentals, proving that you don't need 100 doors. You just need a few great deals, intentional design, and the guts to do things differently. Whether he's backcountry skiing, climbing sketchy peaks in Glacier National Park, or disappearing down gravel roads on his bike, Joe brings that same spirit of freedom and exploration to his investing strategy. He's passionate about building businesses that fund a life of freedom and helping others think way outside the traditional 9-to-5 box. Joe, welcome to the show, man. Great to have you.
Love it. Thanks for having me, Aaron.
Adventuring, I think, is a theme that's going to come up several times in this conversation. And I'm grateful to have gotten to know you we're both in Coach Chad Carson's community. And we even I got to meet you and Katie in person in Charlotte earlier this year. And immediately, one of the things I'm stricken by talking to you is you just have you have a zest for life, and you really are not afraid to go out there and experience the world. And I admire that from afar, especially as someone who's got my lifestyle is pretty constrained and contained at the moment. I applaud that. And I want to hear a little bit more about how you've been able to build a real estate portfolio while still scratching that adventure itch. I would love to hear just the beginning. You talked about living full-time in RV and almost off grid for what was it, 6 years? Is that right?
Yeah, about 6.5 years. I would correct that a little bit. It wasn't quite off grid. Originally we're from Florida. I'm here from Montana now, but we were living in a 55 plus retirement community, which are very common in Florida. So your typical RV resort where you're like maybe 10 feet from your neighbor, but there's like driveways and just lived for really cheaply. I think our lot rent started at $300 a month. So just trying to keep expenses low.
Can you explain how you were living in a 55 plus community in your 30s?
Wheeling and dealing, Aaron. No, I think there is anyone interested in doing this. There is technically speaking, parks are not allowed to discriminate for age. So we didn't realize this going in, but we actually applied to stay at an RV resort next to the one we ended up staying in. It was kind of sad, but they were like, "We love you. You guys seem like at the time we were good kids," but they're like, "We're afraid that there's a lot of elderly guests that live here that they might take exception to you guys living here. Maybe you want to go next door." We went next door to the RV park next door, and I was ready to just give my spiel, and I went there really nicely dressed and everything like that. And I was ready to just like negotiate. Like, we'll pay 6 months up front and all that, but they took us in with open arms. I didn't even have to try to negotiate or do any convincing. And then, when we left there, they ended up saying that we were the best tenants they ever had. We didn't complain about the grass being cut too short or the tables being moved in the community center incorrectly. So we just paid rent, went to work, and they loved us. So it was a great experience. And I think that was probably the biggest thing that set us up to be able to save money for a down payment and then start building this real estate portfolio.
It's interesting. You say you were the best tenants they ever had. That also, I think, gives you a lot of good perspective on how to be a good landlord, right? Because I think any real estate investor that is in the game long enough, what makes a good tenant and what makes a bad tenant. And it also gives you that framing to know how to be compassionate and empathetic, but not too much so to where you're creating bad habits or ingraining the wrong idea. And so maybe that's a little thread I'd love to pull on is, do you feel like your experience traveling, renting, and just experiencing life on that side of the fence has made you better at what you do now?
Yeah, probably. Yes. I say it all the time to Katie because we self-manage. Actually, we're selling our duplex right now I'm a short-term rental expert these days, but we had a couple of long-term rentals. And I say it all the time, like we have a duplex with one tenant who's just, they're always calling me and bugging me and texting me and like for the littlest thing. And then we have one tenant who's amazing, pays on time, doesn't bring me problems. They just bring me solutions. And we appreciate her and we love her because she makes our life easy. And I think that's what it's all about. Just, we do what we say we're going to do. We pay on time and in full. We just basically try to just stay out of the landlord's hair. And it's taught me how to be a tenant, but also I think, yeah, it's taught me how to be a better landlord in a way, but I will admit I'm not the best landlord. That's why I'm switching to hospitality. I prefer to have guests over tenants. But yeah, no, it's exactly right. But I asked her that too when I was like, why were we your best tenants? And she said just that. She's like, you guys are quiet. You guys don't give me any problems. You pay on time in full and you just stay to yourselves and you respect the space and you keep your place tidy. So yeah, it made me feel really good leaving. Just going from the beginning, full circle, not thinking that we were wanted anywhere and challenged to find a place to stay and save money, to being like, wow, she even told us like we could come back anytime. And it was like no kids allowed, but even if you guys had a kid, you could come back and you can have your kid. We have a bunch of grandparents here that would be love to be babysitters. And yeah, it taught me a lot. But
yeah, very cool. So you mentioned, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, thanks for pointing that out. I never framed it that way, but yeah, what we thought we were supposed to do, just pay rent and just be good people.
It's simpler than people think, but yet there's still a lot of different types of tenants that cause problems. So it's good not to be among those. But so let's retrace a little bit. You mentioned that being a landlord is very different than being in a hospitality business like you're in now. And I know you guys will get to the current business, but talk about like how you first got into being a real estate investor. I believe it was house hacking. Is that right?
That's right. Yes. So when we lived in the RV park, we lived in a fifth wheel. So for those not familiar, it's basically it's like a pull behind trailer, but it has the big part that goes over the truck bed, and they're huge. So it was like 32 foot in length, and it had 3 slide outs. But after living in that for 6.5 years almost, we sold that, and then purchased a 21-foot motorhome that we could drive. So we drove this from Florida to Montana, stopped everywhere in between. And to back up a little bit, had I known about house hacking, this is a real estate podcast, so we all know the term house hacking. Had I known about house hacking, I would have done that early on in my career, but I didn't know it was a thing. My biggest idea of house hacking was live as cheaply as possible. So live in an RV park. So fast forward, I educated myself. I found Coach Carson's podcast. I was hooked. So I learned about the strategy of house hacking, and we were searching for a small multifamily in Montana that we knew we'd live in. And we purchased a property, put a big down payment, as big as we could. It was already rented. So both sides, there was a 3-bedroom, 1 bath, and a 1-bedroom, 1 bath. And we actually drove to the property with our motorhome and installed a 30 amp hookup. And we lived in the alley behind this duplex and kept both sides rented out. So we lived for free on the property. It was quite a conversation to have with the tenants at the time. I'm the new landlord. Also, I'm going to be sleeping behind the garage here, right by the dumpster. So it was I think it definitely was true to, I don't know, we throw the term Dirtbag out there as a hiker, as a adventurer. And it definitely was like in line with that vibe. And it saved us a lot of money. So it was awesome.
Yes, to be clear, I did not come up with the idea of calling you a dirtbag. That was your own term that I read from your bio. But I actually like that you have this real connection to being outdoors and exploring and seeing the world. It's something that I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, in Seattle area. I lived in Central Washington. There's just tons of natural beauty all around. And one of the things I regret is not taking better advantage. I did get out quite a bit before we had kids and in my earlier years, but it's something that in my 20s and 30s, I haven't done as much as I would like. And so when you reflect back on, you've been able to hike the 2 major trails in the US, I'm sure it seems like still constantly are getting outside and getting dirty a bit. Like, how has that evolved over time? Obviously, you did it full-time adventuring for a while, and now you have this kind of hybrid life where you're running your business, but you're still out there scratching that itch. Can you talk about that like evolution of what the outdoors means to you?
Wow, that's a lot. A great question. I could say a lot on that. I think for me, so we're 40 minutes outside of Glacier National Park here in Kalispell. I think about it all the time. I think in my early 20s, I was in a place where, call it selfishness, call it, I'm not sure, maybe just naivete. Like I was okay just being in the woods by myself, not having any contact with the world, being off grid. And I felt like I was fine. I was only thinking about myself and just thinking like how fun this is and how much freedom this what I had. Now I'm happily married with my wife, Katie, that you mentioned. And it's hard for me. We manage a business together. We do everything together. We have breakfast every morning. She's an entrepreneur as well as myself. So every morning, we just wake up, we have breakfast, we just talk about our day, and then we go about our day. And the cool thing about Montana as well is that where I'm at, there's so many opportunities for adventure. And like tomorrow, I'm going on a 60-mile gravel ride just in the national forest. And I can be home in time for dinner. So it's for me, I still love to do those longer trips. I haven't planned one recently, but like I can still have a taste for that, and I can still enjoy because it's hard, right? Quitting your job for 6 months and being in the woods and not making any money, a challenge. And I think there's a time and a place. I think as a young person, it was exactly what I needed at the time. It taught me a lot about life in general. And now just being able to operate my business and still do that, it's fun. I almost feel like I'm cheating at life in a way. Like from the tech side, there's a lot of tools and tech that you're aware of, Aaron, that enable that, right? Like before it was a lot harder. Like we use a property, like for our short-term rental business, we use a property management software that I could just operate from my phone. And then we go on motorhome trips. We still have the motorhome that we lived in behind our first duplex. And I actually just de-winterized it 2 days ago. So Katie and I will go on trips where we will actually be like in the national forest with no service, but we do have Starlink now. So for example, I could still go out, go for a hike, disconnected completely, and then Katie can manage things while I'm gone. And then in the evening, we just check our messages, make sure nothing happens. So it's a lot easier, I will say, to do it nowadays than it was 10 years ago. But also, like I said, I think I live in a place that I can get maximum adventure with little commitment, if that makes sense. I don't know. It's my dream place. It's not for everyone. We don't have clubs and fancy restaurants, but if you like the outdoors, Montana is the move.
Yeah, so I love that. And one of the things I talk about a lot on the show and also just out in the world when I'm meeting different people, whether they're investors or not, is building your income streams and your businesses. And whether it's a W-2 job or a side business, build it around the lifestyle that you want to live. And you guys are exact symbol of what that looks like, where you knew what you valued and what you wanted to be doing with your time. You knew that you still wanted this stuff to be able to fit into your day-to-day life. And so you found a place, a physical location that you like living that has access to all that stuff. And you also built and designed a business that allows you to put your guys' personal touch and your love for all those things and impose it into that business so that you can share that experience with people that are coming through. And that kind of ties to what you were saying earlier, where you did the landlord thing, you learned a lot, you were a good tenant, you were learning the ropes of the landlord, but then it sounds like you naturally somewhere along the way shifted towards hospitality. And so what initially prompted that? And then, of course, like maybe take that into how you landed on this bigger project that you guys have right now.
Yeah. So we purchased our first duplex as a investment property. I knew that we were going to build a small portfolio. That was the plan. And so we did that knowingly. We purchased that property. We technically didn't move in. And then we purchased our second property about 8 months after the first one. And we purchased that as a primary residence. So we moved, it was another duplex. It needed a lot of work. It was accidental, I would say. As people might be aware, short-term rentals, they command a lot more rent than the typical long-term rental. It takes more expenses up front, but we realized, okay, after we overpaid for this property during COVID years, but we knew we had to increase our cash flow. And we knew we already had a knack for hospitality. Both my wife and I, my wife, Katie, actually went to school for hospitality, and she's a wedding planner. And I knew like we were very involved in couch surfing. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but basically we just hosted a lot of travelers, international travelers, people traveling across the country. So we already loved hosting and loved just meeting new people and specifically travelers. So we knew we had the knack for it. We didn't have any experience short-term renting. So we just thought, okay, let's just try this thing. We remodeled one of the units of the duplex on the second house. And that was funny because we still had the motorhome and we were living in the unit while we were fixing it up. The second unit was like trashed, horrible condition. And we had our RV parked on the property and we were fixing it up and we were living in it while we were fixing it. And then we prematurely listed it on Airbnb. We were pretty much ready. We just had to do some deep cleaning and finalizing. And we got our first reservation. That was pretty extreme. We had to move out. We had to move out and move back into the motorhome, but we got a reservation for a week and the rest is history. I think we tasted the increased cash flow and it was like, wow, this is pretty good. And we live in an area that is very popular during the summer. People come here for fly fishing, hiking, that kind of thing. So I think getting a couple of strong reservations early on we enjoyed the additional cash flow and income, but we also were like, this is fun. It's a way to make more money and also meet new people and meet travelers. I don't know. It made sense. Sorry, I rambled there.
No, not at all. Actually, I think few things that are important to highlight there, because a lot of people consider short-term rentals because they like the idea of more cash flow, the idea of having somewhere they can stay themselves. They like all that, but they don't think about the fact that you're probably having to interface with people all the time. If you don't already have the composure or character that is interested in socializing, sometimes guests do want additional touch points, or they might want advice or guidance on where should I go, what should I do. So your wife, Katie, she studied hospitality, but then you guys also got some reps of like couch surfing and just like interacting with strangers in a fun and, I don't know, welcoming way. And so you knew before you even started this business that you guys could handle that and it was something enjoyable to you. And again, you're sharing your love of this area and the outdoors with people. The proof of concept was twofold, right? It was yes, you saw the additional cash flow that came in and how that's probably better than landlording. And also the proof of concept was your guys' ability to handle that type of business. Because I do think there's a difference between getting the long-term rental, 8 p.m., like the faucet's loose phone call versus the short-term rental message of, hey, what's a cool place to go eat dinner around here? Or, hey, I appreciate the welcome note that you left me. Maybe I had a couple questions about it. It's like a different feeling giving to people like that than it is to some of the stuff you deal with as a landlord. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, I would like to comment on a little bit on that. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, I tell people like, one, you have to enjoy hospitality if you want to get into short-term rentals. Like there is a lot of benefits, like you said, the ability to block off your calendar if you want, right? If you have a lake house or something and you're like, oh, my family's coming for a week, we want to stay there and enjoy it. That's great. You got to think about the opportunity costs of blocking that off, right? So we tell all of our family, you can't stay with us in July or August. But also, yes, it is hard and we do love people, but it is challenging when you're dealing like long-term rentals, you're dealing with people's homes. There's a lot of emotions behind it, right? Like you got family, you got stress, and you're dealing with people's day-to-day life, which is not always positive. People go through struggles and trials and stuff. So you're dealing with that as a landlord. It's more of I think the tenant landlord relationship is just historically, it's more at odds. But for short-term rentals, as you pointed out, people are on vacation. It might be their bucket list trip. For us, they're coming to Montana. They're from the East Coast or something. And this is the first time they've ever visited Montana. So they're already like in a good mood. They're open to just the experience and a good time. So they're like celebrating a lot of times. But I think it's conducive to a better experience. Now, you do still get annoying texts in the middle of the night sometimes. But another thing I would say about short-term rentals is like, for example, as a long-term rental, like if the furnace is broken and it's winter in Montana, you got to get that fixed right now. Emergencies, obviously we fix right away, but the cool thing about short-term rentals, like long-term rentals, sometimes you can schedule those repairs, let's say if it's not an emergency, but like a lot of times your short-term rental guest is staying for 3 days and there's one aspect of the room that's not right. And a lot of times those are more like, okay, it's harder to schedule that out or you want to fix it now so you can like keep the guest experience at the top level. So that's just something to think about. It's not just, you can't defer as easily sometimes as long-term rental.
Yeah. And that's
People don't think
actually,
about.
yeah, that's another topic I wanted to hit on is expectations. So you guys, you have a beautiful boutique hotel. I went through the website before this, like each suite has its own name. It's thoughtful, like thoughtfully designed. I've heard you guys talk about, I know we talked about when we met in person, like the level of effort you put into making people feel welcome, the personalization, like trying to understand maybe the purpose of their trip so that you can even leave individualized guidance. If you know somebody's there for a family ski trip, that's different than someone who's there for a bachelor party. That's different than someone who's there for any other type of reason. So you guys take it upon yourselves to be proactive and provide a good experience, but also the guest has their own expectations. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things to manage, if I had to guess, is that when people come in and they're booking something that's positioned as like a premium experience, do you find that it's hard to meet people's expectations? Do they come in with unreasonable ideas of what their trip would be like? Or do you find that you guys have found a happy medium of providing the type of service where like everyone kind of wins in the long run?
Amazing question. I think more short-term rental people should be asking this. So I think the biggest reason people leave like bad reviews is mismanaged expectations. So we carefully avoid using terms like luxury and high end, that type of thing, because that's subjective, right? Your version of luxury is going to be different than mine. I sleep in tents and on the ground and on the mud. So we have this like kind of undersell, over deliver style. It's just our style. And people, they end up commenting on, wow, this was like, a lot of times people will say, we booked our fancy place in Whitefish or whatever. And then we booked Switchback Suites because it was 10 minutes from the airport. And they're like, man, I wish I would have stayed at Switchback Suites the whole time. So yes, like we're in downtown, for example. Another thing we do, we're in downtown. It's actually fairly quiet. We're not on a main like highway, but we're one street off of that, there's one property, like there's a buffer, two properties blocking us from the main road here. And I say highway and it's a 2-lane road because it's Montana. But there's sometimes where we make sure to put that in our listing description, right? We even had, actually, this is a good example. A few days ago, we had this woman who was like, hey, what's the yard like? Was there a place for us to sit outside and hang out? And is it forested? And we straight up told her like, hey, we would love to host you. But basically we were like, I don't think we're going to be the best fit because we're in town. Our main benefit is that we're central. You can get to almost anywhere very fast. We have high-speed Wi-Fi, full kitchens, all those things, luxury or high thread count linens and towels. And people love that. We have a digital guidebook. We're local guides. That's what we pride ourselves in. But if you want a place where you can like sit by the creek and enjoy the beautiful serenity of a cabin in the forest, then we're not that. I think that says a lot to a lot of people try to be everything for everyone. And I think it's important to find your target avatar, your perfect potential guest, what we like to call it. So you're not because you're not going to be a great host for everyone, right? You rather just find your type of people and then do really well for that. Like maybe if our client was families that want quiet and peaceful time in the mountains, in the forest, then we would market for that. And that would be us. But like we pride ourselves in, we're for the traveler, the young traveler, people who want amenities like fast Wi-Fi. They want to be able to walk to downtown, walk to the coffee shop. My favorite series. And they just want to be central to everything. And they know how to use tech, right? We use smart locks for everything. So that kind of thing. And we put that in our listing description. We put that in our copy everywhere. So a lot of people don't stay with us because and that's good, but their expectations, they know what they're getting. And then, so we pretty much only get 5-star reviews because we're getting the guests that are meant to stay with us. Hopefully
Fascinating.
that makes sense.
So yeah, a follow up on that then. So you guys know your guests very well now. You've owned this place for almost 2 years, correct?
Just over March 31st. Here we are in May. So yeah, a little bit over 2 years.
Awesome. Congrats on that. And then, so my question is, you know your customer now because you have 2 years of experience and data to see what do people like about this place, what draws people in, what are things that don't work. But when you bought the hotel originally, I know you guys did some renovations and added suites and all that. Did you already have an idea of who your ideal person was, or did you let that kind of reveal itself as you started having guests?
Good question. I think we had an idea, but I didn't realize how important it was to literally define it. Like it's on our social media, literally, as we say, perfect for work from home nomads and adventurous couples. Like, it's just, we point blank say it. We get guests, all types of guests, but we just clearly defined it. And I didn't, because you can't change your location. I knew we were in town, like we weren't the beautiful place on top of the hill overlooking the city, the town in the forest. Like, we knew what we had, but it developed, I realized, like, just through learning, just obsessing over short-term rental optimization and learning about that you really have to define your guests.
Yeah.
I think another thing, it's market specific. Like, people are already coming here. Kalispell, again, we're close to National Park. Having the duplex, which was the second property that we bought as that short-term rental, gave us, it was like low stakes training, lower stakes. Now that we have an 8-unit with a business partner that we dearly respect. So we're like, we can't mess this up. The townhome, it was Katie and I, we owned it. We locked in a really good COVID years interest rate of 3.5%. So it's lower mortgage, lower stakes. And we were able to make more mistakes. And then we just applied that to the 8-unit. So it picks up a little bit and says how we backed into the 8-unit. We didn't just go from, living in our motorhome in the alley to switchback suites, right? There was some step in between there.
Yeah. So I actually want to talk about that, because I think you and I both bonded a bit when we met, because of the idea of, we started with a smaller portfolio. Like you said, the stakes are lower, maybe single family homes or small multifamily. We did the long-term leases, the self-managing landlord thing. And I think for both of us, respectively, it was like a really big learning experience. And it allowed some of those early, maybe you pay a bit of an ignorance tax, which I think is a good thing. When you're learning some of these lessons, you need to learn them enough to internalize them. And then when you go on to a bigger project, you hopefully don't have to repeat some of those early mistakes. Do you feel like you would have been prepared for the boutique hotel and what you're running now, the business partnership, had you not had that earlier experience? Because I see a lot of people trying to cut the line. I just want to get your take on that.
Absolutely not. We wish great question. No, we would not have been as prepared at all. And I think we have a strategy. It's a little bit of my friend the other day told me, we went to a coffee shop and they had cups that said, they had little questions of the day. And I really enjoyed that. And the first question, one of the questions that I got was, what's one thing you appreciate about the person you're having coffee with? And the question, was like, what's one quality? And she said, I love your ability in business. So you think about things, you have a good strategy, you strategize, you run the numbers, you do all those things that you're supposed to do. And then you just unhingedly go in. Man, I was like, I don't know if I should be offended, and actually what I thought about it, and I was like, wow, that's the nicest thing someone ever noticed about me, is that there was definitely a lot of just taking action and just trying it. I'm sure, Aaron, you can relate to this. Like, at the end of the day, you can only study up so much, but we have the strategy with the hotel that, like, if we get the same, we're quick to pivot, we're quick to correct, we're quick to learn from our guests, their reviews or what they tell us. We have this, if people mention something, maybe it's constructive criticism or something negative 3 times, then we correct it right away. So even our rental agreement, as we like our pet policy, every single thing like that is formulated like from trial and error. So now I feel pretty confident in saying that, like, our systems are pretty dialed, but like from day one, like, it was definitely what my friend said. It's just this full send, go for it. And then make the mistakes. And again, like, we wouldn't have been able to do that as easily. We made some mistakes with switchback suites, nothing too crazy. We're still in business, so couldn't have been that bad. But like, for example, I'll give you a funny story. Like, with the townhome, our very first guest, like Katie and I, we love house plants. We just like greenery and just making the place it just feels more alive. And we put all real life plants in our first short-term rental. And then our first reservation, the guy, I think he stayed it was a long reservation. It was like a couple of weeks or something. And our first guest, like, he proceeded to come in. Meanwhile, Katie and I were living in the driveway in our motorhome. We moved back to fix the second unit. And he proceeded to close all the blinds, like complete zero sunlight. And after he checked out, we went back in to check the space, and every single one of our live houseplants were dead. So from that experience, now we're like, okay, it's not as nice. It's not the same exact effect, but we just put fake houseplants in all of our units. So that was just one example. We wouldn't have known. We were just naively, oh, it's so beautiful. Everybody else has fake house plants, but we're going to be smart and have real house plants to make even a nicer vibe. And nope, I learned that lesson real quick on our first guest.
I love
So
it.
yeah,
Yeah, no, and I think you hit on something really important that it's a common theme among the interviews I do. It's a common thing that I reflect on in my own journey, which is there is like a spectrum where very analytical people, which I consider myself to be pretty analytical, it's easy to get trapped, analysis paralysis. That's almost a cliche at this point, but it's true. Like everyone in their own way faces that. And ultimately, like the ability to make a decision, even if you don't have 100% certainty, because nothing is 100% certain, that is a superpower in and of itself. So even though I'm very analytical, I do pride myself on having a bias for action as well, to where I'll try and de-risk things as much as I can by arming myself with information, running numbers, talking to people. But at some point, you literally just have to decide, am I going to do this or am I not? And if you keep thinking about it for a year and you haven't done it, then maybe the answer is you're not going to do it. And if you are going to do it, then you have to just find a way to make it happen. And so I think that compliment that your friend gave you at the coffee shop is a good one, because he wasn't saying that you're a careless like goober that doesn't think about anything. He was just saying that it sounded like he admired your ability to take action and learn from your mistakes. And the other thing I would say too is that like people think of failure as a complete, like there's nothing positive that comes out of it. But one of the framings I've enjoyed the most is you either win or you learn. It's not win or lose or win or fail. It's you win or you have a moment where you get to learn. So the houseplants is a great example. That's a lesson. It would only be a failure if you failed to take something away from it, right? And even the toughest moments in life, you can take something away from it that can make you stronger or more resilient in the future, whether that's your personal life or professionally. I don't know if you agree, but
1000% agree. Yeah. Amazing. And I think, yeah, there's a lot to be said about that, but no, I'll just leave it at that. I think for me, I used to struggle more deeply with toxic perfectionism. And I would like not want everything to be perfect. And if it wasn't perfect, I would just give myself anxiety or something, like, especially dealing with tenants or anything like that. And, I think if you're going to continue with, if you had that mentality, I think real estate investing is going to be a challenge, sadly. And I say that as someone who's recovering. And I think I just want to encourage the people. I don't want to be on this show just as this person. Look at this guy. He has it figured out. He has a boutique hotel. Wow. Hey, I wish I could do that. I think just knowing that we all start somewhere. And then just when you do get started, knowing like all you need to know is the next step, right? Like at this phase, I look back and I'm just like, I even still question. I'm like, wow, like how are we here? It feels fake. I'm sure you can relate, Aaron, as you're working on your mansions. You just like, you'll get to a point and you're getting to a point where you're probably like, wow, look how far we've come. We're here. And if you look at like the 5 year ago, Aaron, you'd be like, I would have never just envisioned I'd be anywhere near this. So I think that just says a lot to just like, we underestimate what we're capable of, like in a slightly longer term. And we overestimate what we should be doing in the short term. People just getting started. Oh, I need to be doing a short-term rental business and I need to have 10 units under my belt. And no, I think it's important just to do the next step. And that's it. Sometimes it's just running the numbers on a property. Sometimes it's calling that agent. Sometimes it's making an offer. Sometimes it's talking to a seller. Sometimes it's learning about watching a YouTube video about short-term rental systems. Like it just one step at a time.
yeah. And obviously I know we're both students, and I would like to think also friends with Coach Carson, who I think has done an incredible job of balancing the two dynamics. One is setting a long-term vision and being bold and kind of like setting goals that are in line with where you really want to be. But instead of being constantly riddled with anxiety about the fact that you're not there yet, then you take that vision, you reel it back, and you plan in like quarterly sprints, right? You come up with, okay, if this is where I want to be in 5 years or 3 years, what can I do in the next 13 weeks that will make consequential progress towards that goal? And then once you've defined that, you reel it all the way back to what you're saying, which is do the next right thing. What can I do today or this week that will help me continue to progress along that direction? But I think that sometimes if you don't have a clear idea of where you're trying to go, then you take action and you feel like it's not moving where you want to go because you haven't taken the time to figure that out. And I think And so that's where I think a lot of anxiety comes from, is when people, they have this deep inner desire to make progress, but they don't necessarily know what they want to make progress toward. And so I think it is a tough thing to balance, but ultimately, like, you also learn what you want to do and what you don't want to do by trying things. Like, yes, like, you've found your thing right now that resonates really well with you. You've built a lifestyle around it. You guys are really happy. You've got a rich personal life, and you've got partnerships, friendships, and a life that you love. But I'm quite sure that along the way, there were times where you weren't as comfortable, or you were still trying to find your footing, and you didn't have this crystal clear vision of where you're going to end up. And you probably just worked your way through it and figured it out. And same here. I had no clue, earthly idea, that I was going to be working with my wife so closely to build residential assisted living mansions, right? That wasn't even on my radar a few years ago, but it was about taking those incremental steps. And we knew we wanted to build a life where we could have a little more time freedom, financial flexibility to be with our kids. And so we just kept moving in that direction. And then the path revealed itself. And so I think that's, to your point, like, people see folks like yourself who, you have something very solid right now, but you're very open and honest about the journey to get there. And sometimes I think that people need to pay a little closer attention to the original beginning of the story than just focusing on, that guy has something that I want, but I don't have. It's no, focus on what you did to actually get to the position you're in now.
Sure. I wanted to mention everything you said was spot on. And it made me think of this book that I read, The Gap and the Gain. And for a lot of overachievers or high performing people, struggle with what you were talking about because they're not there yet and they want to be there, and they beat themselves up because they should be further along. And basically the concept is like celebrating, basically looking backwards at your life and measuring like where you are today versus where you were yesterday, even last year. And I think we should celebrate the small wins. We should celebrate everything. There was times where, no joke, I was literally depressed during the process of starting this business and operating this business, and getting out of bed was tough. So I look back at that and say, man, I'm so glad that Katie was there to support me and get out of bed. And sometimes it was just eating and just sending an email or whatever. It could be the smallest thing. And I'm so glad I'm in a place right now where thankfully I've gotten out of that, and I have more tools to deal with those types of things if I do fall back. But yeah, I think we need to just give ourselves credit, all of us. We're doing well, and celebrate the small wins. It can be anything, literally anything. Yeah.
Yeah, The Gap and the Gain is one of my favorite books as of recent. I went to a conference with Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who's one of the co-authors of that book. And I do think that people probably get tired of hearing me talk about mindset stuff, both in my solo episodes and with my guests, because a lot of the times that's where I tend to take these conversations rather than necessarily getting too deep in the weeds on the tactics. There's plenty of stuff out there about the tactics, but I do think the journey and the way that people think about themselves and the journey they're on is probably a lot more powerful than learning yet another little micro tactic. There's a time and a place for that stuff, but for those who are still trying to chart their path, I would focus on the mindset for sure. So one element on that kind of last topic I want to hit on here is, you mentioned partnerships, right? So you guys went from being just you and Katie, building your own thing, making mistakes. It was your own money. So maybe there wasn't as much pressure you could make those mistakes and it wasn't affecting a group of investors or a partner or anything like that. To now you have this project where you do have a partner who you respect and you care about, and you do have not only expectations of your customers, but you have kind of someone else to be accountable to. So I guess with that, what were some of the biggest shifts that you had to make in order to feel like you were prepared for that, making that leap?
Wow, that's a big question. No, it's a good question. I think it should be talked about more though, but you're exactly right. So going from I think a lot of gurus and content creators talk about, because they're at the level where they're raising capital and they're JVing properties and doing stuff like that and doing syndications, it becomes the norm. But I think it's such a small percentage of investors. When we talk about the small and mighty investor in our online community as well, we talk about, like, the majority of us they have a handful of properties in their name, right? They close with their own money, and that's huge. That's way more than the average person by far. But I think we lose touch as people that are partnering and raising capital or using, as we call OPM, other people's money. but I think it's less talked about how stressful that can be. And that was the biggest thing that probably stressed me out. And I wanted to do so well. I wanted to succeed. I did not want to fail my partner. Of course, I don't want to fail and lose our own money, right? No one likes losing money. But at the end of the day, you can live with that. You're like, I took the risk. I messed up. That's my money. But the potential of losing someone else's money that's next level. Because for me, it was less even about the losing the money per se or failing. It was more about, I don't want to mess up our friendship. I don't want to mess up the relationship. And I think that's something that people should, I think, tread carefully or move cautiously when they're raising money. I think I didn't realize this at the time, but so for the longest time, I'll back up a little bit. I had this opportunity. My now partner was like, oh yeah, let's do something. See if you find a property that makes sense, run it by me. We'll run the numbers together, that type of thing. And I was like, great, sweet, cool. And I thought it was no big deal. And then I found a property and then we started running the numbers and I pretty much had the green light, make an offer, negotiate it. And I was like, I froze. I literally was paralyzed because I didn't realize it at the time, but I was just thinking about all these things. What if I fail? And I stopped. We stopped negotiating for a couple of months and the deal just went flat and just sat there until there was something inside of me that was like just eating me alive. Like it was on my birthday and I was like looking at myself in the mirror literally. And I was just like, if I don't do this, I'm just going to question it forever. I'm going to regret it. Like what would have happened? So for me, everyone's not the same, but it was like, I just got to the point where I was like, I can't not do this. And then thankfully, I got to experience the joys of partnerships. And I think you can go a lot farther with partnerships, but I think this is one thing that everybody, if they're thinking about doing partnerships, they need to think about who they're partnering with. I know this is not a very technical thing. Of course, you need to find someone that has the capital, that knows the mechanics of investing and that kind of thing. But you got to make sure that you jive, right? You vibe. Like if you have a partner that's very just overly analytical and you're not, and or you just can't even communicate because they're going to get upset if you're not submitting your monthly reports and that's going to stress you out. Like probably not the best partnership, right? If you can't be friends, if you can't like sit and have dinner together and just talk human to human and be friends, imagine what things are going to go, or you're struggling, right? And you're not cash flowing your first year. So I think the biggest jump in investing is going from using your own money to using somebody else's money. And I think it should not be taken lightly. So I just wanted to get off my soapbox here and just say, so just if you're not doing that already, like working with someone else, just don't beat yourself up. It's hard. It's stressful taking somebody else's money. So some people do their whole career and never partner. And I think that's okay, right? I don't think you have to. I think the push is build up your portfolio and then syndicate because then you've made it, right? I don't think you necessarily have to do that. It's not for everyone. So I don't know. Again, I ranted there, but yeah, I think because it is almost, I went crazy. I stressed myself out too much because I don't think I was quite ready. If I'm being honest on this show here, but I think doing the partnership allowed me to become the person that I needed to be a good partner. And I think it literally changed my life. So I'm grateful for that. I'm glad I have the best partner that I could possibly have. And I can say that with complete confidence. And yeah, I'm so glad. And I want to do more and we're doing more deals. But yeah, I think it's something you have to really think about, look within, make sure that's really what you want. And sometimes, again, going back to, you do have to take action, but just be aware that it's not going to be easy. And hopefully you can find a partner that you fit well together and you kind of, yeah, it's good to start just with your own circle too. Like just don't go and try to raise money from everybody, random people on the internet. It's not advisable, I don't think. First, yeah.
Yeah,
Start within your closer circle.
Absolutely. There's so many good things in what you just said. And I guess a couple of things I just want to highlight. First of all, I think there is a difference too between taking outside investor capital and creating a long-term operational partnership. Sometimes someone's bringing both. Maybe they're bringing money and they're going to be involved in a joint venture or something where they're maybe providing advisory service, but letting you run the day-to-day, which I think is closer to your current arrangement. But all of these things involve responsibility. The second you take someone else's money, you become a steward of that money. You have a responsibility. And I think it does change behavior too. When it's my own money, if I make a mistake and I lose $1,000 because I was careless about calling in deferring maintenance or doing something that's a little sloppy, it doesn't feel as consequential to me because I'm the one paying the price. But if that same $1,000 mistake I had to go communicate to a partner or an investor, I would be that would hit me a lot harder. Therefore, I would do everything in my power to avoid that $1,000 mistake. So I think it does change behavior. And that's probably some of the pressure you were feeling when you felt like, oh, maybe I'm not ready. But I would challenge that you were ready, because clearly it's all worked out and you figured out how to, like you said, evolve into the person that can handle that responsibility, can handle that relationship, and respects the power of that arrangement. And the other thing I just want to highlight is sometimes people turn to partnerships to solve a short-term problem or a short-term pain point. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. I don't have the specific knowledge to solve this one pain point in my business or my goals, without considering all the stuff you mentioned, which is, can I grow alongside this person? Can I communicate with this person? Would I want to? Not could I, but would I want to sit at a dinner table with them for an hour and a half and have a leisurely meal and talk about more than just business, right? Like, those are important questions to ask. And even if you might be able to solve whatever that transactional need is in the moment, that's not what a partnership is. A partnership is not just a series of occasional transactions, at least not in my mind. It's a long-term, living, breathing, organic relationship between multiple people, humans, and you have to be able to respect each other, grow together, and solve problems together. So I think you summarized it really well, and it's such an important topic. It's really great to hear your whole story, and it's such a cool evolution. I said it at the top, I'll say it again to close it out. I love that you've never lost sight of what it means to adventure and be connected to the physical world around you. That's something I really admire about both you and Katie. And you've built a business that supports that, which I think is the underlying kind of moral of this story and this episode, is that can be done. You just have to know what you want. You have to be willing to take action and listen to the signals along the way. So anything else you want to leave the audience with, Joe? I enjoyed this a lot, man.
Man, I wish we had more time. It went by so fast. Yeah, I enjoyed it too. Thanks for having me on. No, I just want to leave the listeners with just a mega sense of encouragement, and just the message that, like, if I can do it, you can too. I'm just a Joe Schmo, dirtbag that came through hiking the Appalachian Trail to managing a nice short-term rental portfolio. And I want to say, just give yourself credit. We're all starting somewhere. I used to beat myself up as well, because I wasn't meeting my goals today. So just celebrate the small wins and enjoy life. It's beautiful. And if you guys want to connect, just hit me up. I'm always available to help.
I love it, man. Joe's a total go-giver. I highly recommend reaching out to him if you're getting into short-term rentals, or if you just want to talk about the journey of real estate investing or anything. Yeah, he's a great guy. Highly recommend you reach out. I will drop your handles and the link to Switchback Suites in the show notes. And we'll be doing this again sometime soon. I can tell you that much.
Sounds great.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you for making it to the end of today's episode. As you may know, podcasts are very difficult to grow organically. If you're getting value from today's episode, I'd deeply appreciate if you can take 30 seconds to leave my show a 5-star rating and review. This will go a long way to helping me reach more listeners just like you. Thank you so much in advance.